Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky, alongside my co-host, trusted friend, partner. I could come up with a couple other names. Dwight Brown from Salary.com.
I think a lot of people could come up with other names for me.
Yeah, but this is a PG-rated show, so we can't go into
exactly.
those.
I gotta keep those secret.
Yes, it is a secret. Oh, maybe we'll cover that on the 25th episode. Today, we have with us a pretty brilliant guy, and you'll hear why in just a minute. Nicholas Rhodes. He's the founder and creative director of Outsnapped. Hello, Nicholas. How are you?
Hello. I am well. I'm coming to you from New York City. We have bright blue skies with big white fluffy clouds. So I'm in a good mood today.
Wow.
There you go. In fact, I was just there yesterday, dropping off some boxes for my kiddo to pack up their dorm at the School of Visual Arts
cool.
on 24th Street. And they'll be coming. I'll be picking them up maybe in 2 weweeks. Oh my goodness. That's incredible.
Yeah, this year has flown.
It really has. But Nicholas, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Where do you want me to start?
Well, you can start with birth, but that might be a little bit long for this 30-minute podcast.
And I don't remember much from that day. Cool. So I guess, I'll give you the short history. So I went to school in Boston, studied what they called new media at the time, which was early 2000s, back in the time when the internet was black web pages with red text, and we thought it was super, super cool. So I did 4 years at Emerson, learning what we called new media, like I said. And at the time I graduated, the incoming freshmen seemed to know more about new media than I did. Also, after 4 years of looking for missing semicolons and commas, I decided that I wanted to really focus on print design and not so much on the technical aspects of the internet anymore. So up to date, and we'll kind of jump back and forth in time, I've kept up just enough with technology and coding to what I call, or I should say as my dev team calls, to be very annoying, because I know what's possible but can't do any of it myself anymore.
Yeah, know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. I know enough to be a nuisance going into a weekend when I'm like, I don't know, it seems like you could have done that. So after school, I was a double major in new media and photography. After school, I decided that photography was going to always be my hobby, and that I was going to really dive headfirst into editorial design. And so it was a really interesting time, especially, everywhere, but in New York City, I came in as a 21-year-old eager to work in print design, while every other 21-year-old and everyone was eager to work on the internet.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, that internet, I've been there, done that. I remember literally a day where the entire class was devoted to watching a movie buffer, like a 1-minute movie buffer, and thinking to myself, like, how dumb this idea was. And now, obviously, we know the internet has come more than full circle on that moment.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a big learning lesson for me, though, that just because I couldn't see the promise in something at the moment, I still had to keep an eye on it and play with it and tinker with it. So I worked in print design. It was really, really cool, like I said, because I got this opportunity to really jump ahead of where I should have been as a 21-year-old, because no one else was vying for these jobs in magazines. And so I had a really good run going from a production intern up to a art director within the first handful of years. At the same time, I started as my hobby photographing parties and nightlife and music. I was an up and coming 20-something with not a lot of spare money. I was getting entry into concerts and parties by saying I would take photos in exchange for going to the event. So I was getting photo passes and media passes to things. And that spiraled into what at the time they called a personal brand. Fast forward to now, it's influencer. But I had a blog that was operating essentially in my off hours from my day job. I would go out to parties and take photos and post them online starting like 2006-ish. And at the height of that website, we were doing close to 150,000 page views a day from all the major like fashion centers in the world and other major market cities. So this was like, now we think of kind of most of the world as kind of being homogenous in style and concept and music because all these things pass borders so quickly. But back then, people were tuned in to see what was happening in New York from all around the world. So that was really awesome. So as a result of that, I transitioned from my role as an art director at the magazine I was working with at the time, Radar, RIP, and became the managing editor of the website, which was once again a role that I was probably too young to be doing because I did not know how to manage anyone, but I did know how to run a website because while everybody else I was working with was sleeping, I was getting 100 plus 1,000 page views a day. So I came in and was working with these folks. And it was a really interesting time because we were in the process of moving from kind of a website for a magazine having a subscribe button on it, essentially, to subscribe to the official print magazine, and then started running content on those sites themselves, especially in sort of the gossip world that I was working in. Radar magazine was what I like to call a very smart People or Us weekly. And you could see who was reading it, who got the jokes. Like we would always joke in the focus groups who was very smart. So we would start the story essentially where Us Weekly and People left off and continue with the more interesting parts of those things. So long story short, that went out of business in 2008. Magazines literally are still not hiring, and I had to figure out how to make a living. So I started working as a professional photographer with that website that I had, and I figured out how to monetize it. I did a lot of really amazing things, and eventually realizing that in the world I was living as, the only way I was going to be able to make rent was if I started throwing events myself. So many of the things that I have learned, I've sort of in my head invented digital marketing because there was no one to teach at the time. There was no one to teach me at least at the time. So I learned about A/B testing and things like that, and creating products to literally sell tickets to future events.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fast forwarding to where we are right now, I could not expand on that particular project, Nikki Digital, because I was one person. So I started figuring out ways to expand that brand, which then spawned OutSnapped, which is the company that had all the learnings from starting a business and all of those other things that were part of it. So now OutSnapped focuses primarily on marketing experiences, internal events for companies. We used to be just an events business, but now we do a lot of longer tail marketing campaigns. We've had full 2-3 year campaigns internally with companies like Cisco for their onboarding programs through HR, where people can take selfies together and document their onboarding experiences and things like that.
That's great.
Cool.
Well, now that we know so much more about you, Nicholas, we need to ask, what's one fun thing that no one knows about Nicholas Rhodes?
So this is the thing that eventually usually slips out, like a year, 2 or 3 of a friendship with someone. We'll jump to it today.
Well, we're fast forwarding.
Yeah, as a kid, I was a magician, but like obsessively. It was all I cared about, like legitimately all I cared about. And when we would travel around, the first thing I would do when I went somewhere with my family was open the yellow pages to see if there was a magic shop. And there were so few of them around the country that occasionally I would really, really score big. There is an old New York Times article floating around, so I can't say no one knows about it, but I was lucky enough to be on Broadway for a little bit, opening another magician's show.
Oh, wow.
And sort of like the kid opener to get the crowd warmed up, which was an amazing experience. And so much of what I have learned about interacting with people and public speaking really came from that as a child, and having people take interest in me.
That's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Luckily, they have lost the photo. It's no longer attached to the New York Times article. So you have to wait till you really know me to see the photo of me in a top hat and tails.
There you go. We will probably, hopefully one day ask you for that.
Yeah.
So our topic for today is one that will pique the interest of a lot of people inside and outside the world of HR, and that is how AI in the workplace can improve employee experiences. So our first question for you, Nicholas, is you're a creative director, you're a photographer, you've been offering lots of experience to corporations and their employees for many years. Give us an overview of what you think generative AI is and what it will really mean for an HR professional.
Hi, this is Stacey Harris.
And this is Terry Zipper, and we're the host of the two podcasts under the HR Huddle.
On Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, we uncover the latest trends, truths, and challenges from Sapient Insight Group's groundbreaking research and our analyst insights, serving up everything you need to know about HR tech with no sugarcoating.
And on HR We Have a Problem, we tackle the toughest workplace challenges head on, offering you expert advice and actionable solutions to help HR leaders thrive in today's fast-changing world. Whether you want the scoop on tech or tools to solve people problems, we've got you covered.
Take a listen and subscribe. If you want to become part of our community, we'd love to see you.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I want to be clear. I am not an HR professional. One of the reasons
And
why
you don't play one on television, right?
Yet, right?
Okay.
And one of the reasons why I have to keep starting my own companies is because HR professionals Google me and see photos of me dancing on top of things and swinging from poles with famous musicians. But
so they see you as a risk, is what you're saying.
yeah, I don't
good.
I
Okay.
don't get past HR's AI is essentially the issue, right? So what is generative AI? Generative AI is so extraordinarily vast that it's hard to really even comprehend. So one of the examples that I like to use about where generative or AI in general are going right now is we think of an operating system on our phones or our computers in this old-fashioned way, right? So when I used to pull up a calculator app on my computer, I now just do that in ChatGPT. I'm already talking to ChatGPT, and I literally just say, I have this event. It starts on this day, ends this day, this many hours per day. Tell me how many hours total, right?
Right.
So no longer am I utilizing the operating system of the computer. I'm using literally a conversational operating system in which in the future I can do any number of things. Even right now, I can say, make me an illustration of XYZ. And that's how we're using it at my company mostly. Aside from interacting with our clients, we are using it as a product to make generative AI visually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the broad scope of Gen AI. I'm happy to dive in on any of the smaller particles of it, but that's like the broad scope. Is this thing is going to do everything that we do. You're going to get in your car and ask it to drive you somewhere.
But you have to learn how to ask it in order for it to be effective. Because if you say, I want to go, let's because you're in New York City and I love my New York City. If you're in New York City and you say, hey, I want you to take me to Jersey City, and you don't say, I'd like to use the Holland or Lincoln tunnels to do so, is it going to try and find a route across the water?
Go to LA first.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to go that far. Well, I was going to say that doesn't involve actually putting your car on the water. So, you have to learn how to ask it the right question, right?
100%. And I think this is also like a good point to pause and think about. Generative AI to everybody feels like this brand new thing, but Directions is a really great example of how we've been using it. I don't know if MapQuest technically was AI, but it was definitely figuring out how to get you somewhere.
Right.
But to answer your question, like Waze, anytime I try and outsmart Waze, I regret it for the entire drive, right?
Sure.
So it's already doing things like that. But yes, it is about asking the questions. And as the new interaction systems and as the AI gets smarter, it'll be less so about asking the question because it can have enough smarts or reasoning to respond to you and say, I don't understand what you mean. Do you mean X or do you mean Y? And we're already starting to see things like that with ChatGPT. It will give you two answers and say, which of these is what you want?
Right.
Yeah. And it's learning from those interactions when you tell it which one you want.
Yeah. And I think I've really started to integrate a lot of the AI, the generative AI, into even my work processes, both life and work processes. And it has been interesting going through that learning process. And to your point, David, the fact that you have to know how to ask the questions. And sometimes it's peeling back the layers of the onion as you're trying to get it to do something. It'll kick something out. And sometimes it just gets stuff completely wrong. And the fear out there is that AI is going to take over the world and nobody will need human beings. And that's just not correct. I mean, you need those human beings to interact with it, to tell it what to do or ask it what to do, and to recognize where it's wrong.
Well, I think one of the frustrations that I have, Dwight, is that even Nicholas used the context of Waze, and I use Apple Maps, right? Mm-hmm. I find it very frustrating to ask Apple Maps, hey, listen, I want to go home. I am going from New York City from the School of Visual Arts on 24th and 1st. I want to go home, but first I want to stop by a bagel store so I can feed my kids. Mm-hmm. Well, even just the user experience of being able to go and do that is very frustrating because it asks, oh, you want a bagel place in New York City? No. Do one in Yonkers or outside of Manhattan. Okay, do you want one in the Bronx? Yeah, actually, the Bronx bagels are good, but no, I want one further. We're still not at a place, though, yet where it can read my mind.
Right.
Where
Exactly.
it knows kind of, no, I want to kind of escape the city first before I try and get a bagel. I want to be able to park in a parking lot and not have to worry about parking on the street. So what I'm talking about in terms of generative AI is almost like a smart tool learning you, an assistant who learns how you like to do things, and then enables you to do them by asking them something very simple. And they already know the context and all the assumptions behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have to see if it still exists, but there's a really good bagel place in Dobbs Ferry, which should be on your way for next time. So remind me to look that up.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, that would be great.
And I won't take a dig at Apple Maps either while we're here. But
it's all fair.
the thing that I think is really interesting is, since these are conversational operating systems, to do what you're talking about is already available within ChatGPT or Gemini, right? ChatGPT has something that I think it's a feature that I personally think they should have come up with a better name for. Those are called GPTs within ChatGPT. And you can conversationally program them to do things. Okay. So for example, our team, we have conversationally programmed one of these through iteration to draft emails based on responses and things like that. So a lot of the times we can plug in a bunch of information, cut and paste. Or another really good example of this is I've created one that I put together before I hop on a meeting for people. I scour the web for mentions of them, and then I take their LinkedIn profile, the email that we've had to date, and drop it into this tool that I've created. And anyone on my team can use it via the same link. And it will put together a meeting briefing about the person based on what's on their LinkedIn. It'll tell me if we have people in common, all of those things. So I can sit down and, instead of doing the 4 hours of research before a meeting, which no one has time to do anymore, I can read a 10-minute thing that my GPT put together for me and then go and do the further research on those things that I want to do. Once again, AI is not fully replacing me or an assistant, because I still have to go through and do those things. And my assistant is the person who's putting that information into the GPT and giving me the output, right?
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Let's transition this, though, to, so what does it impact, or how does it impact the world of HR? Because what we've been talking about is really kind of how it can personally impact us. Sure. And what normal stuff, outside of the world of work. And what you just mentioned would be really useful, because it's a really cool tool for you to be prepared for your next meeting. But how does it help HR?
Yeah, well, I think I joked about it earlier, but I mean, goes back to 2015, 16, 17. HR has already been using these sort of initial screeners that are AI-based to determine whether or not they should even have a conversation with someone, right? So very similar kind of tool that I just mentioned for a different use case, right? So going through all these resumes and just determining whether or not it's worth talking to someone. I think, like I said, and this goes back to why humans are still very relevant, I think that I would have been a very valuable asset to a team, but I couldn't get past those AI bots, right, to even talk to a human. But another really cool way you could use these things is for, imagination workshops too. I think that these tools, since they can do so many vast things, it's a really great opportunity to lead workshops internally with your team, sales kickoffs, team building experiences, the ability to imagine what you would look like as a better leader, if you're working on a CEO workshop or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of opportunity. And I think one of the things that makes these conversations so tricky is that I'm a creative, so my imagination starts spinning, and I'm not super data oriented where I know HR is, or I shouldn't say I'm not data oriented. I'm not looking at the same data metrics on a regular basis. So one of the ways that I think it could work really well for HR in this use case, for example, if you're at a career fair, you could have an interactive AI experience that asks prospective we do a lot of these for schools of prospective students, but they could be for prospective employees as well. Ask a lot of questions about where they are in their educational career to see when they will be hireable, what their how they see themselves as a leader, what traits they want to learn and improve on. And those answers to the Mad Lib could actually give a visual output that's a takeaway for the individual, but it also will give the HR person a list and a CSV of all the information that was collected, which could tell you about your prospective hires as well.
And it's scouring the web.
Yep,
it could.
Which might be good, or it might be really bad for that person if they've been a very frequent poster on TikTok and have drank a lot of alcohol and then posted those, which we're really not supposed to look at in the world of hiring. We're really not supposed to scour the web for those things. And I guess the question is, so where does HR have to draw the line on those things so that we know what we can do and what we can't do? Or is it really kind of, I hate to use the term Wild West right now, but is it kind of like open?
Yeah, I think it is Wild West. And I would love to say that HR would never do this, but if you have two candidates and they're equal on paper, except one of them, there's an explicit photo on the internet, no, you shouldn't be taking that into account. But as a human, there's no way not to, right? Mm-hmm. So in theory, if you were to program that into AI, AI could not have the human emotion that's connected with that we have. So in theory, it would do the reverse there, where you're actually making a better educated decision because you have no human perspective on it. To me, that seems silly, though, because the human perspective is how you became the HR professional, and therefore is what makes you good at your job.
But as the HR professional, we know the rules that we have to follow, though.
Sure.
And we need to tell the AI that there are certain rules, like we have to have certain blinders on for certain things.
Sure.
And then, if a background check comes back and someone has a criminal history that they haven't disclosed, well, that's a bad thing. And we need to, take specific actions on that based on what we're allowed to do, not just on what we want to do or what we think is the right thing to do.
And one of the things to take into account with this is the error rate that's out there.
Oh, yeah.
And the I Googled myself, for lack of a better term, on ChatGPT, and it was interesting what it came up with. Apparently, I'm a journalist over, I don't know, somewhere out east, and there were a couple other facts that I must have been in a total blackout for, but
it may be because you hit your head when you were doing some very extreme sports.
Exactly, a botched launch on extreme sports. But the HR professional has to be able to weed through that as well. You need that human interaction there. And I don't even know how that works exactly. But
there's an up and coming photographer somewhere in the UK with the same name as me, which has been giving my Google alerts a real run for their money. And I keep getting alerts of these very cute photos of squirrels that are being published around the internet. And like,
Nicholas, are you sure those aren't you?
I'm pretty sure. I took photo 101 in school right on the Boston Commons. And there's actually a rule that you are not allowed to take photos of squirrels because there's so many squirrels there. And apparently pre that rule, just everyone would come back with this tons of photos of squirrels.
The squirrels sued. They said,
exactly.
We want lots of nuts if you're going to use
our royalties.
That's right.
All in nuts. It's got to be in nuts.
Yeah.
But if we think about this in the context of HR, though, other than recruiting, is there other kind of data that Gen AI can capture that would be useful or helpful in the AR world? In the HR world, not the AR world.
AR, it'll be AR pretty
Augmented
soon.
reality.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all going to be in our headset.
Dude, Dwight has one.
Not
Do you?
anymore.
He's got one.
Not anymore.
I got it.
You got rid of it?
I got rid of it.
Dude, you should have sold it to me.
Well, I just returned it. I didn't even sell it.
Okay. He had the Apple one.
Yeah. Gotcha. Did you see like a day 2 or 3 after that came out, there was a guy driving the Cybertruck?
Yes.
Amazing. And then everyone looks around and is like, what's wrong with the world today? So I think, yes, data mining is going to be huge for AI. Obviously, it's a really obvious one. I think one of the other ways that it can really work is activity or strengthening relationships on teams, building and creating conversation amongst people. And I think that for me, the data side of it is really interesting because it can look at data over a long period of time and see things that we as humans can't see. We work a lot with visual AI, and we've had a few kind of sticky moments where something's come back and, it's kind of a minefield because AI is based on society, right? So it has all the inherent biases that we as a society have, for better or worse. And we've had photos come back where people look of a different race, perhaps, than you would perceive them to be. And the person, in this case, happened to be Native American, and we didn't see that in them. But they were very surprised that they were like, no one ever knows it, but I'm like 70% Cherokee, something like that. And it was really interesting because AI saw whatever it was in her face structure and was like, oh, I know that what this person is, or who this person is, what their identity is. And that's a really interesting kind of whole thing to flip-flop on too. Yeah.
Well, from an HR perspective, it's really kind of scary as well, because it kind of outs people. I was using air quotes, everyone. Yeah. Outs people as to what their background is. And that's not necessarily a good thing in the world of HR.
No, it's not. And I mean, I think it's an interesting thing because in this case, it was actually a moment that I was like, oh no, but the person actually felt very seen in a way that they had never really been seen by their peers before. So it does go both ways. But yes, I understand what you're saying from that perspective for sure. I mean, there's so many parts of AI that are going to be perceived as landmines until we figure out how to use them, right? And I think it's like any tool, like the wrong person using a backhoe can do a lot of damage. And with AI, you're the operator, right? And you get to use it in a responsible way.
But the problem with the AI versus a backhoe is the data is really important in the world of AI, whereas data for a backhoe is kind of which lever you pushing, right?
Sure.
Whereas and this has been one of the issues with how some AI have been trained, especially when it comes to different ethnicities and different races. And so the data we have has been unbelievably biased from against or for one particular type of group. And therefore, when we talk Gen AI in the context of HR, we always get, I hate to use the word defensive in this case, but we get defensive about it because Dwight and I both share this, because Dwight's a data guy and I'm an HR data guy. And we share this kind of thought process that HR data sucks, or kind of does suck. And therefore, how do you really get the most benefit out of it unless you go through the exercise of cleaning up the stuff you're going to leverage first?
Well, you could use AI in that cleaning process.
Yeah.
But then you've got inherent bias potentially built into the data.
Exactly. So it's no longer clean. You're not cleaning,
it
you're
is
further
clean.
Dirtying.
Well, it's clean, but what is it clean to? What's the standard use?
Right.
What are the assumptions you're using? And what are we doing to that? Or are we getting to a layer of abstraction that doesn't matter anymore?
Right.
Well, I think it does matter. I think whether or not we'll be able to fix it is the question, right? I think there's so many questions that are still remaining to be seen. It is, for the lack of a better term, the wild, wild west here, right? It's so nascent. And if you look at what we've seen change in literally, it's been a year and 2 months, 3 months since ChatGPT was publicly available, and what it's done between now and then, these things are going to be wildly different. And I do think, there are people who are talking about it the government, I think, should be doing a little bit more than they are right now. But I think we're about to see a sea change with that, with starting with the TikTok ban, and hopefully it starts and continues the conversation around privacy in general, and that's going to go into AI as well, versus just singling out a single app. Because I think, as much as I'd like to point fingers around, but our American companies are doing very similar things, right? And that's where a lot of the data that we're talking about right now is actually coming from those social networks.
Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast, a free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today. So let's talk in our third question about what can HR professional do to get started in this world. Do they put their toe in and get Gemini or Bard or whatever the name is to download, or just, wait until their particular flavor of AI comes available? Where should they go?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I had a really interesting conversation with a good friend of mine who works at a company which will not be disclosed for the sake of this, but they, as an entire company, have been given the tasks of exploring AI, right? So everyone is sort of being challenged to figure out how AI can work in their workplace. And interestingly, their workplace blocks access to both Gemini and ChatGPT.
Wow.
Really?
Figure it out, except.
Yeah, exactly. So they're being asked to do this on their own time as well, which is really interesting. So their argument is that they don't want any company information going into ChatGPT
Sure.
or those places, because once that data goes in, it doesn't really ever come back out. It may not spit it out exactly the same, but the learnings from it never come out. But I think what I suggest people doing is, AI is really scary right now to a lot of folks. And when you jump in and use Gemini, which is another funny name choice considering there's so many other Geminis out there right now. But anyhow, you hop into Gemini, it's free right now. And these tools are not going to be free forever. ChatGPT, you can use not the latest model, but a pretty great model to play with it that's free currently too. And these companies are losing oodles of money so that you can play with these tools for free right now too. The compute power is not cheap on these. And you can go in and literally just have a conversation with it. Ask it to tell you jokes, ask it to write new lyrics to songs, just to see the power of the tool. And then innately, you're going to start asking it questions like, the Turing test, for those who aren't familiar, is just to pass the test, the machine has to be able to fool you that it's a human.
Right.
And with ChatGPT, it can get pretty close, but one of the things that you'll probably do if you've never played with this is you as a human will not be able to help yourself quizzing this AI on how human it really is, right? And you'll hit barriers and you'll hit walls, and it can be kind of a choose your own adventure game with this conversation, right?
Sure.
But I think what I would really suggest that someone can do is, since these tools are free, you can take any one of your tests, the math example that I used earlier, or help me figure out the best schedule for this, or I have these ingredients at home, what are some good recipes? And you can start to see how it responds to you. And you can literally say, if this isn't clear, ask me more questions to get clarification. You can also Google around and find pre-existing prompts that help you build future prompts. So before I got very comfortable in ChatGPT myself, there was a prompt that was a prompt builder. So you'd put it in as your first step, and then it would ask you a series of questions that help narrow down the question you were actually asking ChatGPT.
Sure. There are a million things racing through my mind right now of things I could ask ChatGPT to help me with. But in the world of HR, that has to be more limited, because we need to be able to focus on the human element of it, not just the data element of it. And because I can't bring in, to your point before, I can't bring in proprietary data, nor data about the people that I work with, then I still need to come up with this myself. Or at least that's my bias right now.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that the data element, like we said, is really interesting, but I keep coming back to the activity concept of it. So there's so many HR activities that happen when someone's already a member of the team, whether it's team building, those sales kickoffs. We do a ton of sales kickoffs. There's a lot of ways to utilize these tools to help people imagine a different future or imagine the future that they're already aiming for. We did this really, really cool event with Axios out in San Francisco where people were asked a series of questions to imagine what they wanted the future of San Francisco to be. And it created a completely new San Francisco. And you saw the Golden Gate Bridge and its modifications in the background, right? And so myself, I'm not a painter, for example. But I can, as a creative director, I can describe a style of painting, an artist that I really wanted to be inspired by, or 3 artists that I want to be the combination of. And you can create these things. So it's not just about aesthetic, but it could also, I could take a photo of myself and say, what would I look like as a CEO of 500-person company? And based on the data that's in these tools already, they'll find these CEOs that have 500-person companies and change me to look more like them. Right. And those are, once again, going back to what's the data,
Right, exactly.
But you can imagine these things in a way that are, or I should say, you can see the things that you have in your imagination. And a lot of the times when we're dealing with our clients, they really know what they want until they see it. And they're like, oh, that's not what I want at all. Right. So using it as a visualization tool, even with drafting an email, you get that and you're like, oh, I thought that's what I wanted to say, but the sentiments are that I really need to be front and center aren't there. So let me go back and rework it.
And there are ways to anonymize data too that you're feeding into ChatGPT and still be able to achieve what you're looking for with it. Kind of like the Imagine San Francisco. There's inputs that go with that, and I mean, probably not a whole lot of privacy issues with that particular piece of things, but at the same time, to the point that you're making with that there really is this creativity that goes with it, and you can apply that in many different arenas, especially in the HR arena, as long as you're careful about the privacy piece of things, anonymizing your data that you feed in there, and being able to arrive at good points for what you're looking for.
But Dwight, the more data you put in and the more specific data you put in, the better the model should be. But that then goes against the privacy and the simplicity or what you're talking about, the masking.
Depending what you're looking for. If you're looking for something on a specific candidate, for example, that is an issue. If you're looking for something, let's say you want a ChatGPT to help you with an HR process, that's something totally different. And that's one where you could run into issues with internal processes with the company. You don't necessarily want to send out into cyberspace, but you can do some anonymization of the data,
sure,
to still be able to arrive at the same point. So your point is spot on. Yes, privacy, and there are elements where you can't, you just have to be very, very careful. But there are also elements that, things you can build with it.
But let me ask a question around that, though. And Nicholas, I'm asking this to you, unless Dwight, you can answer this too. The question I'd ask is there any way to have a private ChatGPT server where you can do these things in a box and not worry about it getting outside of that box and having that data get leaked to the world?
Air gap your data.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think, so currently in the world that I work in, we can, for generative AI for visuals, there's a tool called Stable Diffusion, which if you use the public version, then it goes into the same big pool. If you install it, it's open source. So you can install it on your own server and then bring in existing libraries. So you could, in theory, erase that server and everything is wiped. My assumption is that as we see ChatGPT and Gemini go into enterprise mode, there definitely are going to be siloed out scenarios. I mean, Gemini right now, they sent me an email via Google saying like, for a limited time only, I can get seats for $25 a head to use Gemini. So I don't know, it's going to be a very expensive tool, all of these, but they will silo it out. So you will not have to worry about your data being mixed with data outside of your scenario. I think, but then you kind of lose some of the magic. So I think
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's about finding the happy spot where you have access to anonymized data that you could insert your data into and then reflect on how it fits in those scenarios.
Right.
And I think as we grow as a people dealing with this new technology, whether it's the practices that we use or the regulations that we're getting from the government will enforce on us, whether it's from the EU, which have already kind of put some regulations on privacy and data sharing about employees, or, our world in the US, that's kind of going to be taken out of our hands a little bit. But we have to have good hygiene and good practices until that time.
Sure.
I think we could talk about this for another year, Nicholas.
Yeah, this is fun stuff.
Fairly scratch the surface,
This is
yeah.
really fun stuff.
Yeah, this is. I mean, what I want to do now, and I'm kind of energized to do this, is to kind of open up a sandbox in ChatGPT and start playing and asking it some real world questions about whether work or personal stuff.
Yeah.
And seeing what kind of answers I get. I tried early on, and I wasn't good enough with prompts to be able to get anywhere. So I think I might actually have to learn a little bit.
Yeah, I will say if you want to play, there is a pro version. I think it's $20 a month. It is worth the extra $20 to play with because ChatGPT 4, I think 4.2 is what it's up to now, is significantly better than the free one. I know because I've run out of credits on the pro one and have to use I have to wait an hour or use the old one. But it is wild. And I do encourage you also to check out those GPTs. You could search in them for HR tools. I'm sure someone built them already and dig into those as well.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, our next conversation with you will be much smarter about ChatGPT and our use of it.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for being here. Dwight, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I could talk about this for hours.
Thank you all for listening. Take care and stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.